Hi guys, it's Isa. Today we're gonna see 10 fantasy books that are perfect for beginners. For this video, what we're gonna do is to move from what I believe is the easiest to get into because the writing style or because are very plot driven or the plot it's kind of easy to follow, and then books that are a little bit more heavy, the magic has a bigger component within the story or the world building it's a little bit more complex. Starting with one of the most popular fantasy authors out there, we have Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This story it's a standalone, the writing style it's very easy to access, the story has a magic system that it's a very interesting, but it's not kind of like the biggest thing. The main thing it's kind of the relationship between different members of Discord, and I think it's something very fun to read as well. And this story will follow the path of two sisters that mainly are kind of fighting their destiny because their dad, the king, he is in constant kind of threat of war with the neighbor kingdoms, especially with one which is the most powerful. And so his way to stop war was to decide that one of his daughters is to be wed with this godlike king so that they were not to be attacked. The thing is that when the moment comes and this daughter is supposed to go to this godlike king, then the dad decides that, oh no, this daughter, it's kind of my favorite, and instead I'm gonna, like give away my other daughter, which I don't love as much. And so here we go, we have one of the sisters that is in this path in becoming this bride for this godlike king that no one really approaches, and then we have the older sister that takes upon herself to save her sister, and she also gets kind of like into this city. The thing is that although we will have these two stories and the stories are compelling and are interesting, we'll have also kind of like a third layer here, which is of the gods that reside in this city, because it seems that in this city if you died very heroically you can came up from the dead being a god, and we will be following the story of one of them, particularly the one that doesn't really believe that he is a god, but he is super smart, so he is always making jokes and trying to outsmart everyone that serves him. A very good way to get into Brandon Sanderson. Then we have Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and this story it's just
Such a whimsical story.
it's a high fantasy and it includes a lot of different elements, but again, it's very easy to get into it because the tropes that it tackles are tropes that are kind of common to us. It has pirates, it has witches, and it has this classic path of competition between different brothers to get into the power. And a chosen one story, it has it all. And we will start with Tristan. He lives in this town and he is kind of a misfit, but he is deeply in love with this girl that is very mean. And so one night he's kind of like open his heart to her, and he sees kind of like a star falling into the earth.
And so they kind of make a deal, and if he retrieves this star for her, she will marry.
So he is now kind of like in this path to cross the walls that have always protected this town. No one has ever crossed it, and come to the other world where the star is residing. The story, it's sweet, it's of change, it's of growing up, of the power of being different, and how when you're owning that, then you look around and you see that you don't really care about the opinion of anyone else anymore. Moving a little bit into the Japanese folklore, we have Shadow of the Fox. Again, books that are really easy to get into, and this is a story with a feudal Japanese setting. However, it really reads as a video game. It has like a lot of folklore, a lot. It has different and very compelling and deep characters, but at the same time the story it's a very light. It's a trilogy, but the books are short and they read very plot driven, and it feels like a video game because they go boss after boss after boss after boss. That's kind of the vibe, but the story, kind of like the surroundings, the quest and how you get there, it's what matters here, and I really enjoyed it. We will be following two main characters. This is a dual point of view story. The first one is of Jumeko, this girl that is half woman, half kitsune, so she is kind of like a half fox, and so she has all of her life lived in this shrine temple, and one day everyone gets killed and she is
On the run.
protecting one of the secrets of the shrine, and trying to get it to safety. In this path, she will meet the second point of view of Tatsumi, who is this shadow samurai that has the power to hold a demon within his sword. And so although he is very like, yes, I want to kill you, and he also has his own agenda, we will see how the story will bring them together very early. It's heartwarming, surprisingly emotional at times, and I really think it's a very good start for fantasy. Then we have A House of the Cerulean Sea with TJ Klune, and in this case we will be following our main man, who is kind of like a workaholic, and he is in this position when he goes to the different orphanages, making sure that the kids are being treated fairly.
The thing is that he doesn't really know what happens after.
But he doesn't really care. And one day, because he has been so good, he receives kind of like this secret project in which he will need to go and check this house in the Cerulean Sea and checks on some children. His surprise is that upon arriving, he will find that these 6 children are all of them very magical, and all of them the most powerful and dangerous children of them all. We will have the devil, we will have a sprite, a gnome, kind of a werewolf. It's adorable. The story, it's not heavily fantastical, you know, like yes, the children behave differently, but you can imagine like the routines that they have in this house. You have a lot of descriptions on this setting and how everything goes on. The writing style, it's also very easy. It's fairly optimistic, but the humor that TJ Klune has, it's very kind of like on point, I think, at least for me. And then going a little bit more dark, we will have Six of Crows, a duology by Leigh Bardugo. And this story will follow 6 characters performing a heist. And so it's a story that it's not heavily fantastic because the magic, it's not very powerful in here. There is kind of this setting in which the magic has a role, but it's not really very greatly in the story. The magic of this book mainly are the 6 different characters and the relationship between them all. We will have kind of like the leader of the gang and the people that surrounds him, and how between all of them they are playing a key role in retrieving this very important thing that will make them kind of like the most powerful gang. Then we move to another duology with Estrange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is fairly whimsical, but I'm putting it here because it's a little bit more slower, and because the themes that it touches are also a little bit dark. Not as much in the first one, but in the second one things get serious. The writing style also, it's very descriptive, not really all over the top, but it's beautiful, and I really enjoy the prose, but maybe not something to just start if you are getting into fantasy. And we will be following our main man Laszlo. He is a misfit, and all of his life he has been obsessed with this city called Weep. Weep is supposed to be a city similar to Atlantis, and it's kind of like a place where magic resides, but 200 years ago or so, everyone stopped believing in it, no one remembers anything about it, and they're like, did Weep really happened, or just you know, it's just a story. Laszlo believes it is real. He has been learning all of his life whatever he can about the city, the language, everything, and how useful, because one day people from Weep comes into this village kind of recruiting people because they are facing in Weep kind of like a very severe problem and they need help. He of course goes, starting a set of events that will place him into Weep and discovering the magic beings that live there and a lot of other things. It's also a dual point of view, and both characters are cinnamon rolls. They are very sweet, but again, it's fairly emotional at times, and the magic that we will see, it's not really hard. People just have magic, and the magic that they have, it's fairly explainable, it's easy for us, and it's great. Then we have An Ember in the Ashes by Sava Tahir, which is a quartet. So this is a fantastic series. It's kind of like a very good place to start in fantasy, I believe, because the topics kind of like start in something that we kind of like can understand, and something that it's not as high fantasy, and then the story really progresses and it just goes like bigger and bigger and bigger. But the author does this in a very kind of like progressive way, and this is a multiple point of view story. But mainly we'll have the first one of Laia, who is this girl whose brother has been kind of arrested, and so she seeks help kind of like to the scholars, which is kind of like this rebellious side, and they are kind of like the resistance. And yes, they are like, okay, yeah, we will help you, but you in turn will need to infiltrate yourself into the militia, into this school, and learn whatever you can and try to kill the one that is ruling. And so she's
Like, okay, I'll do it.
and that's where her story begins. We will then meet Elias, the main other point of view, who is kind of like the son of this ruler of the militia, and he is kind of training with her best friend to be kind of like this very elite warrior. And in order to do so, they are conducting different very savage trials that will put whoever wins as the new emperor. So the stakes are high here. We will see how the story of the two start to blend, the motivations are not clear, and overall we'll see how characters, as well as in Six of Crows, are a little bit more grey, and they aren't as straightforward as you may think. Then we have Mistborn, again by Brandon Sanderson, and although I read Mistborn before than any of these books, and I could argue that it's kind of like the first book that you should get into, I do believe that although the first book it's really easy to get into, book 2 and book 3 were a little bit more complex, so that's why I'm placing it kind of like more towards the end. And this story will follow different points of view, but all of them live in this world who is kind of facing the aftermath of this Lord Legislator, kind of like the bad guy ruling over 1,000 years. Everyone is kind of like enslaved, of course not the powerful ones, but we will have a hard magic system, a very structured magic system here, which consists on people can ingest metals, and these metals provide powers. So you can kind of like use a metal to fly, or use a different metal to change the feelings or motivations of people. That's kind of the thing. Usually people has just access to one of those metals, but we will start the story with our protagonist who is able to seize them all, and as a result he kind of like sets himself at the beginning of this revolution, trying to overthrow this Lord Legislator. But everything starts with a heist. It's very plot driven, different, very charismatic characters, definitely packs a punch. It has a lot of different twists and turns
That will make you say like, oh my god, what I am reading.
We move then to the Aurelian Cycle, which is one of my favorite series of all time by Rosaria Munda. This is an unconcluded series, the first one that we have seen in this list, but the last book it's gonna come this year. We will be having this story that it's fantastical, and we will have dragons, but we will be talking a lot about the motivations of the people, about how the aftermath of a rebellion it's not necessarily always good, and we will have just the best characters. We will be following mainly two characters, again a dual point of view. The first one is of Annie, this girl that is an orphan because when she was a child her family as well as a lot of people in this realm were killed by the Dragon Lords. The thing is that the Dragon Lords, as were very bad, they were overthrown by these people, and this is the people that now it's ruling. And then we will have the second point of view, which is of Lee, and he is in fact the son of one of the most powerful houses of Dragon Lords. So he is again also an orphan, and he and Annie met when they were small children, but you know, they have this kind of like wound between them, which is their background. So they grown up together, they are kind of best friends now, and they are in a position where they are starting some tournaments as dragon riders. The winner of these tournaments will be kind of like the leader of the militia, and it seems that they are whispers of the past coming by, and they will challenge them. And we conclude this list with Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This again is unconcluded, but it's concluding this year. In here, what we will be having a heart magic system,
but it's really interesting.
People can inscribe elements, kind of objects, and persuade them to behave in a certain way, describing a door to not open never again. And we will be following our main girl, as she has the special power of sensing the objects. So she's able to sense how the objects are feeling, and they tell her things, which makes her the perfect thief. And one day she is tasked with thieving one small box, and while doing so she finds herself that the stakes were not as expected, and she is chased now for all of the different houses because it seems that what she has stolen is very powerful and may change the scales of this world. I know it doesn't sound as good because I remember being there and hearing this story and saying like, I don't know if I would like it, the magic doesn't seem like my thing, but please give it a try. It's very plot driven, it's funny, the story, it's way better that I can never explain, and overall it just, after you read it, you get a sense of, yes, I read something that it's good. Easily a 5-star for me any day. All of this book in fact are 5 stars for me. So, and that was it for today. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I publish bookish content every Tuesday and Friday for you to enjoy. If you want to see more videos like this one, subscribe to the channel, and I really hope to see you soon in other videos. Bye bye!